Hello, and welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club. I'd like to wish a good local time to everyone. Also, we refer to it as the I-40 Club. Our main purpose is to engage diverse worldwide talent on a wide range of educational Industry 4.0 topics. We do this by hosting respectful, thoughtful, and interdisciplinary conversations. This is Women in Manufacturing, our Tuesday conversation with a focus on tech and manufacturing. In this space, we discuss the perspectives and challenges of women at work and at home. In this series, Discovering Women in Manufacturing, we're taking a look at unique roles in the industry, and our topic of discussion today is discovering something greater than community. I'm Carol Mitchell-Lin, an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder. For over 6 years, I've been creating content for I-40 adoption in manufacturing. When I'm not supporting my fellow co-founders, I'm a content marketing specialist at Fuse Data. Fuse Data is a startup in Toronto, Canada, where we help enterprise teams transition from the spreadsheet scramble to meaningful, easy-to-access reporting. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host and fellow I-40 Club co-founder, Grace Donovan. Hi, Grace.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks, Carol. As Carol mentioned, I'm Grace Donovan. I'm also a co-host and co-founder of the Industry 4.0 Club. I am currently serving as the executive director of the Rural Engagement and Vitality Center in Eastern Oregon to make our local university more of a resource to the broader community and advance the rural workforce and retain talent in our areas so that we can advance a more equitable future for rural America, specifically in this case, rural Oregon. And I have a background in manufacturing through working in software sales for a manufacturing startup, as well as in heavy industry, specifically on mining. So I'm really excited to be here with you guys today.
Thanks, Grace. We're pleased to have as our special guest, Allison Grealis, the president and founder of the Women in Manufacturing organization, also known as WIM. Hi, Allison.
Hi.
We really appreciate you taking time to be with us today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me as a guest.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. And if we could, just to dive in, could you share a little bit about you and give us an idea of kind of where you are today and what brought you along in this journey?
Yeah, so as was shared, my name is Allison Grealis, and I am the founder and president of the Women in Manufacturing Association and Education Foundation. I started the group 13 years ago, and we are now a global trade association serving close to 22,000 members in every U.S. state and 50 plus countries. So it has been an amazing decade of growth for our organization, as well as expansion of our resources for all of the members and allies that we're connected to in our footprint. I've worked in the trade association space for 22 years. So back in the day, or if you talked to my younger self, I would have had no clue what a trade association was. And I still talk to people present day, even as recently as this weekend at a neighborhood party. People don't really get what is a trade association. So did not think I'd be spending the bulk of my adult career working in trade associations, but it's been so very rewarding. And for those not familiar with trade associations, they are organizations that companies typically join because they have a common business purpose and interest. So the first trade association I got introduced to right after grad school was focused in the metal forming space. So it was a metal forming association. And while working at that trade association, WIM was born. So I had the opportunity to work with women in metal forming at the time, women business leaders and owners. And they really introduced me to kind of their unique challenges that they had in industry, as well as some of their unique interests that they had in terms of connecting with one another and finding a community of people like them. So it's been a really great professional journey. And I always had a personal interest and passion around women's issues. So I often say that I am very blessed to get to work in a space where things have come very full circle, where I can match my personal passions around women's empowerment and helping women advance with as well in this great industry of manufacturing. So it's been great that I get to go to work every day, virtually or live, and get to do something that I really, really care about.
So you mentioned that you had like a passion for women's empowerment and development, and just kind of taking it back, kind of looking at your bio. You were an English major in college, and Did you ever foresee yourself kind of working in the manufacturing space? I know we know there's a statistic of a lot of women kind of fall into manufacturing, and that's kind of been my experience. Kind of what led you or kind of brought you to working in trade associations? What was that connection like?
Yeah, so looking at my younger self, I was an English pre-law women's studies major, and originally I was a poli-sci major, and I thought for sure I was going to go into either being an attorney or working in the public sector or working on public policy. So had kind of thought would be my trajectory there in that space. And when I got to college, I was, you know what, I don't think I want to do that. I think alternatively, I had a passion for English and writing, and so decided to pursue that alternatively. But while I was on campus, I went to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. Go Bobcats. While I was there, I found that, very similarly to my high school experience, I found my biggest passion around being involved in our local organizations on campus. Mm-hmm. So I was part of the women's organization, one of the political organizations. I was on student senate, and on many different organizations I volunteered my time with. And that's where I felt fully charged and excited to participate. And so while I love my classroom learning, I was more activated and excited about a lot of the volunteer work I was doing on campus. So I was the queen of signing up to do things. And what I really liked about that was that concept of taking people who are like-minded, mobilizing them around doing something with an impact. And so when I was looking to go to college, or when I was looking to go to what's next after college, originally I was planning to go to law school. I decided not to go at the last minute when I went to a career fair on campus, and they introduced me to what at the time, I think it still is present day, the Public Interest Research Group. And they were a not-for-profit organization with a U.S. kind of footprint all throughout the United States. And they were working on good government and public policy issues and environmental issues. I thought this is really cool. Again, it's taking this idea of mobilizing grassroots organizing and doing it at a different level. And so decided to do that alternatively. I thought I was just going to take a 1-year pause before going to law school. And again, it turned into a much different career pathway for me. So I did that for a year in Boston and got to work on campuses, specifically at Amherst College and UMass Amherst, mobilizing students, again, around kind of common issues and helping them make an impact, meet with legislators, be spokespeople for certain things that they cared about, and did that for a year. Came back to Akron, Ohio, where I grew up, and went to grad school at University of Akron and got my public administration degree. And then that led me to finding an opportunity in trade association work. But when you ask about manufacturing, interestingly enough, I think the sad part is I'm not dissimilar from most people in that I was never introduced to manufacturing. So when I was in elementary school, when I was in high school and college, had I heard from an amazing woman in manufacturing who told me about her trajectory and her opportunity to make products and things that consumers use every day, and her professional pathway that may have led her to overseas assignments and challenging tasks and problem solving on the job, I think I would have very much been intrigued by a manufacturing career and may have very well have pursued something in manufacturing had I known about it. And I think that's one of the things that our organization is so passionate around, is how do we get that story told at an early age and at every age about what manufacturing present day means, because so many of us go to college just because we think that's what we need to do. And then as well, we pursue degrees that we think are those that are going to be a good match for us, but we're not really hearing about these whole other opportunities that exist in manufacturing. So had I known about manufacturing, I think there would have been a very good likelihood I would have pursued something in that space. But having not been introduced to it, I found a different pathway. So trade association work has been great. And again, it's something that marries a lot of those interests I had around mobilizing people, helping people kind of message and story tell. And then as well, I think most importantly, and as connected to our organization, is about having an impact. So how do we change conditions for the better for women and for this industry? And then as well, how do we hopefully have an impact on future generations so that the workplaces they come to are more inclusive and more diversity focused? And as well, how do we get them to help be better ambassadors to recruit future generations?
I think that pretty much explains the question I had for you, Allison, on what is WIM. I think that really explains it really, really well. Now, would you add anything else to that?
Yeah.
If I asked you, what is WIM?
Yeah. So, WIM is a trade association. So the Women in Manufacturing Association. And, Again, our work is focused on three special areas or three focused areas. Our mission is to support, promote, and inspire women in industry, as well as the companies that they work with. So when I started the group, we were more structured like a society. So it was just individual members that could join and become part of the organization. And soon after creating the group, I realized, we have to find other ways for other constituents to be part of the group. So we created a year or so later a corporate membership option. And then soon after that, we created a student member option. And now we have, I think, 5 classes of categories, including, for membership, including Professional Plus, which are often women who were practitioners in industry who now are consulting. So we have kind of a large group of the industry that we represent. And we're very focused on creating this community for women in manufacturing. And that's why the group first got started. When I was working with those metal forming women, and at the time, our only female chairperson and first and only female chairperson of that other association, she and I were both passionate about there's a need here to connect women and to create a community because so many of them feel isolated and alone, and as though there are not others like them. So WIM was really built on that concept of creating community. And present day, again, that's what we try to work on year round, is how to invest in resources for that community of members, whether they be an individual member or a corporate member that we're connected to, and or a student who's aspiring to maybe enter manufacturing. And then as well, how do we help them have successful careers? Present day, if you look at stats, women are still 30% of the manufacturing workforce. We've made some modest strides since I started the group. We used to be in the higher 20s. So, we've grown by a whopping 3%. But, our goal really is not just to get to 50% of the workforce, but really to get more women leaders in manufacturing so that we can impact and change cultures and policies and what companies look like for the entire workforce. So present day, 1 in 4 women manufacturing, or 1 in 4 manufacturing leaders are female. So, our goal is to get more female leaders in manufacturing. And again, through our programs that we've developed and our resources, we hope to accomplish that.
So that touches actually beautifully on one of the questions that we had, is kind of looking at some of those stats that, like, you guys have been also very influential in kind of getting out there. So we haven't seen a ton of significant change from 2021 and 2020 to 2021. There was a big jump, a lot of big labor force disruption and a lot of kind of changes happened. So it's not entirely unexpected now in hindsight to see some of those changes. But how are you looking, or how are you optimistic about ways that the stat can improve? And I think it can be easy to be somewhat pessimistic about those statistics. However, in the same study, it's also worth noting that a lot of women and men are very optimistic about women's futures in manufacturing.
Yeah, we're very optimistic about the future for women in manufacturing. Interestingly, if you look at data, I think it was the Jobs for Jobs report provided by the Census Bureau, from 2010 to 2020, women grew in every single age category in manufacturing. So women actually grew at a faster rate than men did in terms of employment population participation in manufacturing. And then, unfortunately, of course, pandemic happened, and we know that all industries were impacted. And as we know, many women, unfortunately, retreated and reevaluated their work situation. And so many women just left generally the workforce. And so we do see women coming back at very strong numbers back into manufacturing. And again, we're very positively encouraged by that number, as well as by the growing population, again, that we saw in all age demographics for women in manufacturing. So more women are entering manufacturing. Again, our goal is to help them have successful careers. So retention is a huge focus of ours. And we work very closely with manufacturing companies of all different sizes to say, okay, wonderful that you've recruited this female to your workforce, but now how do you retain that person? How do you invest in their development? We do conduct an annual survey with Xometry, which is a Thomas company, which can be found on our website under data and research, which our website is womeninmanufacturing.org. Under there, you'll see our 2023 research that came out. And that's our 3rd year of publishing this data about kind of the state of women in industry and workforce development trends. And what we saw there was that women really cited a few different things that they're looking for in manufacturing careers. One of the biggest is flexibility. And, flexibility is not just a female issue, it's an all gender issue. And it's something that, I think the entire workforce after COVID and pandemic has really demanded in our current positions and future positions. People are looking for flexibility so that they can achieve some type of, personal and professional balance or integration in their life. The other thing is childcare. So women who were in manufacturing careers cited that childcare is one of the biggest challenges that they are, that's a big obstacle for them in terms of working in manufacturing and just generally in the workforce.
Yeah.
And then the other piece that women were citing as kind of why they want to be in manufacturing and or what they need to be in manufacturing was leadership development and professional development. So looking for companies that align with them with both flexibility, potentially some support as it relates to childcare, and then as well companies that are making investments in leadership and professional development. And I will cite childcare. It was a pre-pandemic issue. It's a post-pandemic issue. It's not something we're going to solve overnight. And so, we have lots of active conversations with manufacturing companies about what they're doing to help support their workforce. And again, this is an all gender, all parent caregiver issue. I think men present day want to be just as active in their kids' lives. And so it's how do you support that, especially knowing that the cost and the accessibility of childcare has even become more difficult as pandemic has closed. So, or paused, I should say, because we know that obviously COVID still exists. But those are big challenges. And so we're having active conversations with companies, and many of them are doing creative things, where resources can allow, they're creating systems by which they're, offsetting costs of childcare for employees, where they're creating voucher systems, where they're creating creative scheduling to allow parents and caregivers to still be in the workforce and still work with their company, but also perhaps be home for before and after care for kids. And then even some have created, on-site childcare systems and or facilities to support their workforce.
Yeah, those are all like positive trends. I think that we're happy, generally speaking, that's going to kind of a rising tide that's going to lift all boats. And so those are really wonderful things that are set in motion. And I'm sure it'll take a lot of time for us to really see kind of where those efforts go. But it's really positive to see that that's starting. We have a whole bunch of questions from Karen Rivera. So we have women.
Hi, Karen Rivera. I know Karen. She's one of our chapter leaders.
So one of the questions that she asks that really touches on kind of what we were just speaking about are, what are your recommendations to help introduce other women to the wonderful world of manufacturing?
Yeah, so, great question. And thanks, Karen. And Karen's one of our active chapter leaders. So thank you for the work that she's doing in the great state of Texas. And those 32 volunteer chapters I mentioned prior, they're all led by volunteer leaders, men and women, who are great allies to manufacturing and are giving up their time to lead our chapters. So thanks to Karen and all our other chapter leaders. So introducing women and men to manufacturing is critical. And so one of the things that we believe very firmly and passionately about is storytelling. So, asking our current members and women and men in industry to tell their story and share what manufacturing means to them, what they do in manufacturing to inspire a future generation. We're working very passionately in the marketing communication space to ideally highlight these stories of our members. And we're doing that through a bunch of different ways. We have a blog series called Hear Her Story, which is featured, I think, close to 50 or 60 women now in their day in the life of what manufacturing looks like for them. We also have chapters that are doing some amazing outreach to local schools and educational institutions and to parents, which we know are often sometimes the biggest barrier to people entering manufacturing careers. And then also that other storytelling piece that we are working very actively on is our Hear Her Story podcast. So we have featured close to 30 guests on a platform just like this, where we're highlighting the story of women in industry. So how did they get to their career? And again, as you cited, I think, Grace or Carol, so often many of these women happened into manufacturing by accident and not by design. So our goal is that through storytelling and hearing these women's journeys in manufacturing, we can inspire other women and men to enter industry and ideally choose manufacturing as their career and pursuit rather than falling into it.
Love that. And would want to highlight the podcast that you guys do. I was looking through some of the guests. We've interviewed some of the same women. They're absolutely phenomenal. And we also, if you want to go back and hear Karen's story, we interviewed her just a couple weeks ago. So go check out the Women in Manufacturing episode with Karen Rivera and her story in manufacturing, because it was really touching and really incredible. So I agree that storytelling is a really important way of just seeing yourself and your abilities in the career paths and trajectories of other women, or just being able to identify with something in the industry and that it doesn't become as foreign, and kind of the veil like lifts a little bit of, what could a life in, doing this be like? Is it something that I want to kind of toss my hat in the ring and try out? So I think that's an incredible, powerful way to go about it. So awesome, like even for marketing.
Yeah, it really works. I mean, if you listen to some of our episodes, some of these women, and quite a few of them who've been on our podcast, it was one teacher, it was one guest speaker that was at their school. It was one person they met at a career fair that talked to them about a co-op. It was that small exchange and or influence that led this person to choose manufacturing and to choose that pursuit. So everyone can have that same impact on others, and we have to stop staying silent on all the great and cool things that we're doing, because you never know who you're going to pique interest in or who you're going to spark some interest level with. So again, I think storytelling and sharing your stories is just very critically important.
So I'm a member of the Texas chapter, and I've been adopted virtually via Toronto, Canada, but I find that the chapter is what grounds me to the organization as a whole. And definitely I've seen signs of more than just community. There's family, and there's a sense of friendship, and where people have obtained some success, they've built their families on that. And sometimes with the help of contacts within their chapter. And I wanted to know, was WIM everything that you dreamed it would be?
I think present day, it definitely is living up to everything I hoped we could accomplish, but I also know that there's still so much more we can do. And if I look at the current stats, I mean, there's more than 3 million women in manufacturing. And while I'm so excited to say that we've reached milestones of 20,000 plus members, I know there's so many more women that are still out there who need WIM, who would benefit from not even just the professional development pieces of what we offer, but I think to your point, Carol, the personal impacts we can have on people so that they feel supported. And maybe they don't have many allies or many champions in their personal life. And for WIM, that could be that for them. It can be that sisterhood of people that they can go to for advice and guidance, and someone to throw ideas to, and or be a connector or an advocate when you're looking for a new position or a new opportunity or to advance at your existing company. So I hoped that we would get to this point where we would have these very vibrant networks, both locally and nationally, now globally, that people could connect to. But I do want us to, and I aspire for us to be able to reach even more women and allies over the course of the next decade of the organization.
Is that where you see the growth? Sorry, Grace, go ahead. Is that where you see a lot of the growth really at the chapter level? I'd like to get a sense of what your plans are with the chapters and developing them and helping support them.
Yeah, I think chapters are definitely one of those vehicles for us to, I mean, we can't be everywhere for everyone. So chapters are a perfect vehicle for us to help connect to people where they're closer to home. It helps us reach deeper into a company where we know not all employees have access to travel budgets and the ability to be at our nationally produced conferences. So chapters are a perfect partner for us to reach people at all levels in manufacturing as well as within their backyard. So yes, chapters are definitely part of a growth strategy for the Women in Manufacturing Association. Right now we have our newest chapter starting in the next month or so in Iowa. So that will be our 33rd chapter. Our next chapter that we're looking to establish is in Florida, where we have lots of interest. And then internationally, we've had lots of growth as well. So we have interest in Canada. I was just at a conference this week and they were asking about Canada. We have international. We launched our international efforts this past March in Zweibrücken, Germany. Many thanks to John Deere for hosting our first kickoff event. And that's really where we'll see kind of our international footprint growing through corporate support and sponsorship. So rather than jumping out of the gate and creating altogether unique entities internationally, we're leaning on our 400 plus corporate members to help host international programs at their facilities in international locations, by which we can then bring WIM to other populations outside of the US. So we had our kickoff in March in Zweibrücken. We have our next program in October on the 10th in Barcelona, Spain, and that is being hosted by Amazon. They also are hosting a second October program in Tokyo, Japan on the 18th, and then thereafter we'll be going to France in November, hosted by GE Healthcare, to Brazil in first quarter of 2024, first quarter of calendar year, and then to Munich, Germany in early spring. So again, being able to expand our reach to women now all over the globe is so very rewarding.
That's fantastic. And that's a lot happening in a very short period of time. So big congratulations and hats off, because that's no small feat. to have a world tour set up after launching just in March. But you've been, correct me if I'm wrong, but Women in Manufacturing has been growing internationally for quite some time.
We have year over year. We have continued to gain international members, and it really was the pivotal point for us was the obviously pandemic, and when we made the decision to virtualize all of our programs. So our summit for 2020, which was supposed to be our 10-year anniversary in Cleveland, Ohio, was then a virtual conference, and that was the first time we really saw a significant amount of international participation in our big annual meeting, and that really kick-started a lot of international participation in all of our virtual programs. This year we have, I think it's almost 20 international countries represented at our big annual summit in September. And again, record attendance at our San Diego summit from all over the US, as well as, again, those international participants.
That's phenomenal. As someone, I used to participate in and work for a very internationally focused organization, and it's so incredible to have, networking opportunities all around the globe and get to learn from, people in drastically different contexts and cultures that are kind of sharing similar struggles and have different stories. Like, it serves as such a great source of inspiration. So that's just really exciting to hear. I'm really excited for you guys.
We are very excited as well.
Yeah. So I want to take a little bit of a turn because this is also a question that Karen put in the chat. She's reading our mind because we also had similar questions around now developing women in manufacturing. So she wants to know, what are your favorite examples of successful initiatives aimed at developing women in manufacturing? And I think that's the perfect tie-in to talk a little bit more about the WIM Education Foundation that you guys developed.
Yeah, so companies have been coming to us since the beginning of our start as an organization to look for resources to develop their female talent. And we know, again, that many more women are entering manufacturing, but how do we help them advance is critically important. So companies have worked with us in partnership to either strengthen or create what are our existing assets for professional development. So present day, we have an education foundation. It was started in 2016 and specifically focused on making education affordable and accessible to all. So present day, we have stood up 3 formal professional development programs. We have our Empowering Women in Production program, which is our newest, and we've had close to 400 graduates from this 20-week virtual program. And that was designed in partnership with manufacturing companies. So they helped and worked with us for a year and a half to develop the curriculum, to identify faculty members, the competencies, the assessment components. And that's been a very, very successful program. And then obviously our goal is to help them throughout the course of their career beyond just participation in this program. We have a program for early career managers called our Management Development Program. Again, we've graduated now 6 years of classes from that program, and it's been highly successful in helping women be successful as first-time managers. And then we have an executive level program for director level and above called our Leadership Institute at Case Western Reserve University. And that program is designed to help women lead successful companies and lead successful careers. And that's in partnership, I think I said, with Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. And that we have an audience that participates from all over the globe, as it's now a virtual program too. And then virtual learning we do year round. That's an hour a month that we offer in a live learning session. And then all of our learning sessions that we've delivered since we launched the program can be found on a learning library that members have year-round access to, so they can learn on demand and download courses based on what they can consume at that time, time-wise, as well as maybe what their areas of interest are. So enrollment, so company success, to Karen's point, how have companies been successful at advancement? It's leveraging programs like those. Many companies as well have their own internal leadership development programs. Mentoring is critical, so we are looking at mentoring solutions for our general membership to launch in 2024. But mentoring programs that companies are creating and supporting have been very successful in helping people advance in their companies. But we know that it can't just be mentoring. Obviously, sponsorship and someone being your advocate is even more important. So having someone who's talking about you in rooms when decisions are being made about advancements and opportunities, critically important too. So companies that are having success are investing in kind of all of these types of programs so that they can have better success at advancing their female talent.
That's awesome. And it's having access to education resources like that is so important, especially, and I think it's still, you mentioned kind of in the early days of WIM, or women kind of feeling very isolated and feeling very much on their own, that having this community where they can go to and see ways that they can advocate for themselves and also kind of showcase solutions and bring things to the table at the companies where they work of like, hey, this is a great pathway, that's not only going to benefit, themselves, but also the companies that they work for. It's really great to know that those resources exist. And so that's wonderful that there's a library there for folks to go. So encourage anyone who's listening, who's looking for professional development opportunities to check it out.
Well, Grace, I don't know. I think we would. Did you want to talk about the stat from the WIM report that we had planned still?
I think we covered it a little bit earlier. Allison was wonderful and showcased that a little bit. So we've been able to touch on that and just, where we see this advancing. And I think, education, this is kind of my outside perspective, is that having these education courses is really, at the same time going to move the needle on how many women in leadership we see, which is ultimately what you mentioned that you're looking for as a way to transform, culture and organizations from the top and make them more inclusive and welcoming environments, make it more visible for, women and girls who are looking for, representation at those levels. Perhaps, have you seen a connection and change since 2016 when you guys started the Education Foundation, and any changes in those numbers?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we don't have the ability to track all leaders in manufacturing. I mean, you can definitely look at Department of Labor and their statistics as it relates to the classifications of women in manufacturing, and we have seen some changes there. I mean, we ourselves track the women who've completed our courses, and we definitely have seen a high level of promotions and advancements since completion. So we feel our programs work, and our companies that have leveraged them have said that they've worked for them. And our goal is, again, to continue to have more and more graduates who then get advancements after their completion of the programs.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's great.
Excellent. And did we want to plug the Women in Manufacturing Coffee Challenge? Maybe?
But of course.
This is a reminder from Karen. I think the Texas chapter has been really good at promoting this. Thanks to other chapters for doing this as well. So the Women in Manufacturing Education Foundation. Wednesday is tomorrow, a reminder for the coffee challenge. Those willing to sacrifice morning beverage to donate to Horizons 5K. Did you want to say something about that, Allison? The Horizons 5K?
Yeah, so our foundation is always looking for charitable contributions to support the expansion of our educational resources for women in industry. This year we have our second annual Horizon 5K. It is being held in conjunction with our annual summit, which is again September 25th through the 27th in San Diego, California. So we are encouraging people to become a runner, or either a live runner if they're with us in San Diego, or a virtual runner, or just to generally support another runner or a team, or make a general contribution to the Horizon 5K. So information can be found online about how you can support that. And then also at our summit, we celebrate our annual inductions in the Women in Manufacturing Hall of Fame class for 2023. So we're excited that we have 10 amazing women that will be inducted this year. Their bios can be found online, and that also is powered by our Education Foundation.
Excellent.
Amazing.
There's a lot going on, so congratulations on that. Now, this particular series that you're joining us for, Allison, is Discovering Women in Manufacturing. And we'd really like to get your take on it. What does discovering women in manufacturing mean to you? And what does discovering manufacturing mean to you? So if you would like to take one of those.
Well, I think I spoke a little bit to this earlier. I think that it's kudos to you folks for hosting a podcast and a series on discovering women in manufacturing. This goal of growing awareness is critical, and to see you folks carrying the torch and helping to expose more people to the pursuits and the passions of women in industry is so critical. So excited to hear that you featured Karen and many other women in industry so that they could share their journey to hopefully inspire more people to become a part of this great industry and to be another woman in manufacturing.
Yeah. And in that same vein, looking back and encouraging folks to go check out the Hear Her Story blog and podcasts that you publish. We also interviewed a woman in Boeing a while back. She's no longer with Boeing, but her podcast is Leading Like Her, and her name's Erin. And so that's another great resource of a woman in manufacturing who's sharing leadership and learning lessons that we'd encourage anyone to check out. So that podcast is Leading Like Her. These are just all wonderful resources that kind of we've come across as we've been on this journey of interviewing and talking with women in all areas of the manufacturing industry. So as kind of a closing question that I have for you is really, where do you see kind of the future, the next 5 to 10 years of women in manufacturing? So you're about to kick off an incredible world tour. What's going to be after that?
I think our goal, as I cited, is just to expand our resources and as well expand our community and our reach. And so as we look as an organization of how do we impact change in this industry, we need to have more allies. We need to have more ambassadors. So I think growing all of the great allies that we can have throughout the United States as well as internationally is important. I think as well, continuing on this journey of messaging and being more of a reputable and known, kind of ambassador for industry as it relates to telling the stories of the industry as it is modern and much different than many people think from years ago. So I think expanding that so that, people know of not only us as a resource, but know more about what modern manufacturing looks like is critically important. And then as well, perhaps in the future weighing in on some of these issues that are really affecting just generally women in the workforce, and how do we help combat that, or how do we help, work to the interests of our population. So I think that will be a future goal for us. But again, we hope to serve more women in industry over time. We hope our footprint, that someday we'll have a chapter in every state. And I harken back to when I gave one of my early presentations, I think in our first year in Chicago, and I had this little map of 2 states that were highlighted in green. And now to see, presence in all of these current states and hopefully many more to come. That excites me to know that women in even some parts of some of the most remote parts of the United States are maybe learning of us or finding us and getting help from us is so hugely important and exciting for me. So again, I hope that expansion happens over the next decade.
Yeah. And that's really the power of kind of virtual communities and harnessing the power of going online, which is something you guys have been doing, well before the big push that we saw just a couple of years ago. Is that it really makes it a lot easier for folks in remote parts of the country, and I'll put myself in that category now. Is that it really facilitates a lot of those connections, and especially in places where resources might not be as readily available, where you're living in smaller populations, where manufacturing, you might have like one facility and it might be quite far removed from others. Of just finding resources like that. I know that's been our journey as the Industry 4.0 Club, coming together around kind of this new wave of technology in the industry. And so it's really encouraging, and you get to meet so many fantastic people. So I'm really excited to see kind of the evolution of WIM over the next couple of years, and congratulations on all that you guys have achieved so far, because it's really impressive.
Well, thank you.
Okay, now that we're approaching the end of our chat today, usually what Grace and I do is a final thoughts and takeaways. And we like to give our guest the final takeaway and thought. So Grace, would you like to go first?
Sure. I also just want to echo, the shout outs that we're receiving. So Mike Unger sends his congratulations on such great progress to promoting women in manufacturing. In terms of takeaways from our discussion, I think, I'm like actively processing out loud here. I think the way that you've been able to visualize it is really what I admire the most, and kind of my real takeaway from this conversation, because it's looking toward the future that is not only going to benefit women and kind of men generally, just the industry, but then the pieces that you're putting in place to kind of build up towards that result that you're looking for long term takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of dedication, takes a lot of effort and hard work. But I see a lot of these pieces that you're mentioning of, education and working on the ground with chapters and doing a lot of conferences and bringing people together provides not only a lot of pathways, but also a lot of ways for folks to engage and to share a common vision about, what we want for the workforce and for women so that they can have fulfilling careers in manufacturing. And the way that you have structured the organization to help channel a lot of those energies towards those goals was kind of my big takeaway. It was really clear to see that.
Thank you, Grace. And I think my final thoughts and takeaways is very parallel to yours. I like the word mobilizing, Allison, that you've used a few times. And really, if you need to have impact, you have to mobilize people. And when an organization the size of yours is growing and growing in different areas, sometimes it's easy to lose track of why you're here and where you need to go. And by focusing on mobilizing people to have impact, I think is a really nice grounding term to use. And that's my final thought. So go ahead, Allison.
Oh, well, thank you for your final thoughts. My final, I guess, message and call to action is to encourage people to connect with us. So to that point around mobilization and impact, we can't do it by ourselves. And so we need wonderful allies. We need volunteer leaders. We need individuals like anyone who's listening either live or on demand later to tell your story and to be a spokesperson for this industry, for your career, and to share your thought leadership. So I would encourage people to connect with us, to become an ally of WIM if you're not already, and as well to connect and utilize our resources that we've put in place for you to leverage.
On that note, where would you encourage people to reach out to you or get connected with Women in Manufacturing?
So we have a website, which I'm sure, of course, everybody has a website, but it is www.womeninmanufacturing.org. So that is a great place to navigate all of the resources we have, including dedicated homepages to every single one of our local chapters. So you can learn about that, our international work, and how to get connected and get your international facilities connected to WIM. And then as well, we're very active on social channels. So our LinkedIn community is our largest and most actively growing. So you can check out there to see timely information shared by not only us, but by our members individually and our corporate members. So I guess check us out on all of the social channels as well as our website.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And before we close, I'd like to thank you, Allison, for joining us on this topic. We appreciate your vast knowledge and experience in really building a network of women and men as allies. And for those who are listening, if you like conversations like this, we encourage you to look out for more upcoming episodes in this series, Discovering Women in Manufacturing. We still have a few more guests to go before we wrap it up. And for updates and notifications, we encourage you to go to industry40club.com, our website, and follow us on LinkedIn, Industry 4.0 Club. Also, if you'd like to keep in touch with us on a weekly level, we have our newsletter, Shaping the Future. You can subscribe to that in the footer of our website. And I think that's it for today.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much, Allison, for spending this hour with us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.